With the beginning of Great Lent, the Church calendar is enriched by the Liturgy of the Presanctified Gifts, one of the most remarkable works of the Byzantine liturgical art. Every time this liturgical service is celebrated, the name of its supposed author, St Gregory the Great, Bishop of Rome, is pronounced at the dismissal. Is the ascription of this Eastern-spirited service to a Western saint and the Western liturgical tradition really justified? The most ancient manuscripts, as well as the modern editions of the Presanctified Liturgy, make no mention of its compiler's name, and the service is called simply the Liturgy of the Presanctified Gifts. The practice of attributing the service to one saint or another appeared as late as in the 12th century. The Greek euchologia of the 12th through 16th centuries often mentioned the name of Saint Herman of Constantinople. The less widespread inscriptions with the name of St Epiphanius of Cyprus appeared after the 14th century. The name of St Gregory the Great begins to appear only in the 15th century. This makes the tradition of attributing the compilation of the liturgy to Pope Gregory I the youngest of all. A vivid example of the gradually spreading attribution of the service to the Roman bishop is contained in one of the surviving service books originating from the Kiev Metropolia. It says, quote, "The order of the divine presanctified service of our Father among the saints Epiphanius of Cyprus is ascribed by others to Pope Agatho, while the Athenites say it to be an elaboration of Gregory the Pope." End of quote. The authority of the Holy Mount Athos has always been very high among any Orthodox. Apparently, the Athenite opinion eventually became dominant. The question, where did the tradition of attributing this Lenten service to the famous Roman saint come from, remains nonetheless. It becomes even more relevant in view of the fact that such a liturgy is not characteristic of the Western Rite, where the practice of celebrating full Mass on weekdays of Great Lent was established precisely during the pontificate of the Holy Dialogist. In fact, we can say that the Roman practice under St Gregory was generally the opposite of that of the Eastern churches, which, following the decisions of the ancient councils, stopped serving the Eucharist on Lenten days and began partaking of the pre-sanctified gifts. After the worship reform done by the pontiff, the difference in Lenten worship between Western and Eastern Christians became even more noticeable. In the 12th century, the Byzantines began to wonder why Roman Christians celebrate full Mass on weekdays during Great Lent, ignoring the rules of the ancient Catholic decrees. A request was made by the emperor, resulting in the clarification document compiled by the Patriarch of New Rome Mikhailos II. It indicated the authority of St Gregory as the first to introduce such a practice. According to the well-established opinion, the appearance of St. Gregory's name in the manuscripts of the Liturgy of the Presanctified Gifts was caused by a mistake in the Synaxarion of Constantinople misinterpreting the clarification document of the Byzantine Patriarch Mikhailos. The first edition of the Synaxarion still corresponded to the facts, reporting that it was St. Gregory who established in Rome the practice of celebrating full Masses on the weekdays of Great Lent. However, in some of its later editions, that message turned into the opposite statement, saying that St. Gregory established the liturgy that the Byzantines celebrated during the Lenten days. Apparently, the Byzantines' memory and understanding of the Western liturgical tradition were rather vague during the late 6th century, particularly in view of their antagonism with the Latins. Additionally, the aforementioned clarification pointed to the Liturgy of the Presanctified Gifts being a part of a tradition more ancient than the times of St. Basil the Great and John Chrysostom, and to one of its prayers belonging to St. Athanasius the Great. Based on the authoritative testimony of St. Simeon of Thessaloniki, a prominent 17th century hierarch Dositheus II, Patriarch of Jerusalem, asserted that, quote, "The presanctified liturgy was inherited from the successors of the apostles and is not the creation of Gregory the Dialogist." End of quote. Saint Nicodemus the Hagirite agreed with this opinion and included the refutation of the Roman bishop's authorship in his authoritative collection of canons titled the Pedalion. As a result, the attribution of the liturgy of the Presanctified Gifts to St Gregory the Great was gradually rejected by the Greeks, hence the name of the Roman saint not being mentioned during the dismissal in Greek churches. The Russian Old Believer practice also follows the Greek custom, while in the modern Russian tradition, St Gregory's name is not in the title of the service, at least not in the standard editions, but is still remembered during the dismissal, which appears as a kind of a compromise option.